My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Sports Legends of the Carolinas. I'm your host, Scott Fowler, sports columnist for the Charlotte Observer, where I've worked since 1994. And as always in this podcast, I'm traveling across the Carolinas, seeking out some of my very favorite sports legends and asking them to tell the stories behind their rise to iconic status. Now, for this episode, we've traveled to Greensboro, North Carolina, and I'm delighted to be sitting across from one of the most popular TV sports broadcasters ever, Jim Nantz. Jim Nantz has provided the soundtrack for many great sports moments over the years. He's been with CBS Sports since 1985, and he's a 5-time National Sportscaster of the Year honoree. A storyteller at heart, Nantz has called multiple Super Bowls, Final Fours, and the Masters, sometimes all in the same 9-week span. You'll know his voice as soon as you hear it in this podcast. What you may not know is that Jim Nantz has deep North Carolina connections, which we'll let him explain. He was inducted into the North Carolina Sports Hall of Fame in 2024. And you may also not know the origin story for his signature phrase, "Hello, friends," which he uses every time he opens a telecast. You'll hear that story here too. Next, it's Jim Nantz on Sports Legends of the Carolinas.
Jim, welcome to the show.
Well, Scott, what a pleasure. Thank you for going out of your way and including me in this distinguished gathering of sports icons. I don't qualify, but I'm very honored to be a part of it.
Well, we're delighted to have you. Let's start just by you explaining your North Carolina connections to the
all
audience.
My family is from the Charlotte area. My dad's family, the Nantz family, hails from Gaston County, and specifically Mount Holly, where my grandfather, Jim Nantz Sr., I'm the third, was the local postmaster in Mount Holly.
I didn't know that.
In a little town like Mount Holly, the postmaster knows every citizen in town, and he's one of the most popular figures in town and one of the most trusted, and that was my grandfather's role. Parenthetically, he played basketball at the College of Charleston before there was an NCAA tournament back in the late 20s, and was a 2-time captain of the College of Charleston basketball team that advanced to what was then a version of the Final Four in Chicago. And he was a gifted athlete who also was a baseball player and played in the New York Giants farm system as a pitcher before he threw his arm out. He ended up settling in Mount Holly, where my dad was born and raised. My dad went to Mount Holly High School and later migrated to here, where we are now in Greensboro, at Guilford College, and was a 2-sport star for Guilford in both football and basketball. As a matter of fact, when my dad played his first game in football, 1945, it was Guilford at Maryland in College Park. Ooh. And the head coach for the Terrapins that day was a coach making his debut named Bear Bryant. A few years ago, I was calling a game at the old Cole Fieldhouse, and I mentioned my dad had played in that first game ever for Bear Bryant. Bear wasn't there long. He went from there to Kentucky to A&M, and eventually, of course, built one of the great careers of all time at Alabama. But my father had been in that game, and I'd mentioned that to Jack Zane from the Maryland athletic staff, and he said, there's one tattered program left. I'm going to go pull it out of the archives. And he brought it up, handed it to me, and said, let's see where your dad is in this program. And I opened it up. It was more like a pamphlet. It's like 8 pages. Yeah. And we turned it over the cover. There was the Guilford team, the Guilford Quaker roster. The first name listed was James Nantz, 16 years old. He was a week shy of his 17th birthday. 16, Mount Holly, North Carolina. He started at defensive end and end on offense. They just called it end. And they got shellacked, like 60-6 that day. But career win number Bear Bryant. The Nantz family was there to see it. So my mom's side of the family comes from more in the central part of the core of what we know Charlotte to be today. My grandfather Troll, Bronze Troll, was a World War I veteran, and he came back and raised 4 kids on Camp Green Street in Charlotte. He proudly worked for Sunbeam Bakery, drove a bread truck and delivered bread to people's door every day. Really? And they had 4 kids in the family. My grandparents lived in that house for 63 years, and they raised 4 kids in a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom house. And that's the family story. We hail from Charlotte and Mount Holly, and we're proud of it.
And you were born in Charlotte as well, right?
Yeah, I lived there for 6 years. We lived originally off of Albemarle Road, and eventually we moved off of Providence Road. And I went to Lansdowne Elementary in my early years. And then my dad, now working for McLean Trucking, got transferred. He was in the management office and got transferred to New Orleans, later to the Bay Area in California, ultimately to the headquarters. We lived in the New York area, in New Jersey, during my high school years.
Your mom was Miss Charlotte or something?
She was.
So she won a pageant?
Is that a beautiful lady. That was part of the Miss North Carolina, Miss America, you know, have the steps along the way. And she was the runner-up to Miss North Carolina. She represented Charlotte, and she was so proud to be a Charlotte Belle. She went to Harding High School. Yeah. It's now known as Harding University.
Did your parents meet in Charlotte, or was
they met on a blind date?
Yeah. Okay.
And my dad was serving at Fort Jackson down in South Carolina, and they were a beautiful couple. Married November 23rd, 1951. They're both gone now. They've taken residence in the Old Town Cemetery in Mount Holly.
Oh. The Nantz family plot is there?
There is one there, and that's where they are.
You wrote a beautiful book about your dad, and that I've read, called Always by My Side. Highly recommend that. Tell me a little bit about yours and his relationship.
It was as close as a father and son could be. You know, my father being my hero, my inspiration, and my best friend. And he suffered for 13 years with Alzheimer's disease, and it was really difficult, as everyone knows, because it basically affected almost every family out there in some capacity, an aunt, an uncle, a parent. And he just was the life of a party kind of a guy, big, robust, strong, athletic, in shape. But at 66, he suffered a mini stroke while he was attending a golf tournament I was broadcasting in Dallas. Actually, it was in Fort Worth, the Colonial Tournament. And I just thought he was overheated, but he actually had suffered a mini stroke, and he was never the same after that. 1995, he passed in 2008. And I wanted to write, well, I actually didn't want to write a book, but I got pitched in 2007. I was going on a 9-week journey, 63 days. I was going to call the Super Bowl, the Final Four, and the Masters.
Look out! What a finish! Number 4 for Tiger.
I remember it, first time it had ever happened, right?
I just felt very fortunate. CBS had all the events, and grateful they entrusted me with them. I had a literary agent pitch to me the idea of writing a book about what those 63 days look like, start to finish. I didn't really have any interest and didn't think anyone would really care what my day-to-day looked like. But then when he circled back and said, I know how close you are to your dad. Do you think of your dad all the time? Well, of course I do. Do you long for him to be with you? That was always the goal, was my dad was going to retire and he was going to travel with me week to week, and we were going to do this all together. So he said, you ought to write a story about how you find your father with you on that 63-day stretch. And alas, the light bulb went off, the interest level rose, and we had a concept that I was going to be comfortable with. And that's how we gave birth to Always by My Side, which he is, and so is my mom. I mean, they both were heroes an inspiration to me. I don't want to minimize at all that my mom was any less of an inspiration. She was just amazing, and she survived my dad by 14 years, and the greatest support system a young boy and a guy growing up into his 50s and 60s could ever have. Loving parents.
Absolutely. And their names were?
Doris and Jim.
Doris and Jim.
I'm Jim.
Right.
My
Jim.
dad was Jim Jr.
You're Jim the Third.
And I'm Jim the Third.
Yeah.
Around my family, Jimmy. Because
Jimmy.
just to differentiate.
Okay. Yeah.
Jimmy, very, very Southern kind of a sound to it. And I was always Jimmy until I got a broadcasting job while I was in college. And I thought, I think I better go to Jim. I'm going to sound a little bit more credible. A little older and wiser.
You don't want to be like
mature.
Jimmy Olsen. You want to be
exactly. Right. So we went with Jim.
Yeah.
And I'm proud to carry my father's name.
I read in that book, and I didn't even know this team existed, but that your father had once played semi-pro football for the Charlotte Clippers.
The Clippers.
Yeah. Do you
they
think
actually, I think, were more than semi-pro. They were part of the either part of a league that the Cleveland Browns came out of.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you think that at all that football triggered or accelerated the Alzheimer's, all the blows that he would have taken?
I actually do. My dad played in the leather helmet era with no face mask, and he always battled hearing loss. He was deaf in one ear, and it came from a football injury. Rushing a punter from the edge, he went in to block a punt, and the punter's leg extended and hit him in the head by the ear and burst an eardrum. Alas, he lost hearing. So it was always problematic, my dad just being able to stay up with the conversation. But I don't have any doubt that there was concussion-related dementia, which we all know the game has taken great strides to try to make it safer. And my dad's days were really unsafe. You look at what the equipment they played with back then.
And hello, friends. Hello, friends. Hello, friends. Hello, friends. Jim Nantz, Grant Hill, and Bill Raftery. Championship night. There's nothing like it.
I'd like you to tell the story. I'd like you to say it, if you would, just because I told someone I'd get you to say hello, friends, for us.
Thanks.
But also tell us the story. I know it has something to do with your family, the story of Hello Friends, and why you do that.
Well, Hello Friends is something I open up every broadcast with when they come to us on camera. And it really was born out of just trying to connect with my dad as his memory was slipping. It's not some cheesy line trying to draw attention to myself. That's the last thing I ever wanted. But in 2002, I was by his bedside, and he had faint recognition of anything. I was always playing tricks to try to keep the engines turning inside of his head. And when I left that one day in 2002, I said, Dad, this weekend when I'm on the air, I'm going to be in Minnesota at Hazeltine calling in the PGA Championship. I'm going to look into that camera. I'm going to say your name, Jim Nantz, but I'm going to first say hello, friends, because you have nothing but friends. So that you know, when I say hello, friends, I'm thinking of you at that moment. You got it? Got it. Now, reality is he probably already escaped him by the time I walked down the hallway, but I did tell him on the phone because we called every day, multiple times. I'm going to say, hello, friends. That's going to be for you, Dad. So I looked into that lens that day, and hello, friends. Jim Nantz here. Welcome to the PGA Championship. Didn't think anything of it. The show ended. I got a call from one of my CBS colleagues who doesn't work golf. And he said, hey, I heard you say hello, friends. What was that about? I told him the backstory. He said, that sounds like you. You ought to do that every show. So I kept doing it. And no one really, other than my friend Eli Spielman, noticed it, picked up on it. But the repetition of it, people started to say, he says that all the time. Some would even get snarky and say he's trying to create a signature line. It was all about trying to connect with my dad. And, when you look into that lens, there is no feedback. There's just a camera lens, a round hole. If you think about it, there are X number of people, millions of people on the other side of that lens. You can't see them. So years before, Jim McKay, broadcasting hero of mine, had said, always when you look on camera, think of someone, try to speak to that person on the other side. Imagine someone's there. I never really could relate to it until Hello Friends rolled around. And once I started saying that, it relaxed me. I think like a golfer, maybe gets a little jittery till they make that first swing and hit that first shot. Broadcasting for me has always been the same way. I don't sleep always that great. I'm anxious until I get on the air, even after all these years. But when I say hello, friends, my dad's been gone a long time. I still, for a flicker of a second, I see an image of him, and it calms me, and I'm able to kind of move into the broadcast. So it's been around enough now that people know that's kind of a common line of mine. And, it's not an attempt to do anything other than try to remember and honor my father.
That's beautiful. That really is. What is there a similar backstory? What's the origin story to a tradition unlike any other?
That was a line that came out of my early start at CBS. And I got hired in 85 by the network. My first master's was 86. And Frank Cherkinian was this legendary golf producer, father of golf television, he was known as, and probably will always be remembered for that, being the guy that really brought golf to television. And he had me come to Augusta for my first Masters and record the promos for the Masters show that would air during the NCAA basketball coverage. He wanted people to get familiar with the fact that I was part of his golf team. And by inserting these promos during the March Madness run-up, people would say, oh, he must be part of the golf team, because the golf team was legendary. Pat Summerall, Ken Venturi, Ben Wright. So I showed up at Augusta at Frank's behest in March of 86, and there was a great producer, creative producer named Doug Toohey, who really came up with the line. He kind of showed me the copy, and I delivered it. So I give all credit to Doug. And on those promos, I was teasing the Masters coming up.
Did it stick around from then until now?
Yeah, I just thought the line was so good that I used it all the time.
Yeah.
I might have helped popularize the line, but I've just, again, the repetition of it. It's just, I get asked a lot to say, will you say that line again? Could be walking through an airport. I want to hear the tradition unlike any other. A lot of people will say a tradition, they'll screw up the line a little bit. They'll have it off a little bit. Unlike no other. They'll say something like that. But it's unlike any other. And now you see all sorts of variations on it. Commercials for automobiles. Mercedes, I think he had it for at one time. But that is trademarked now. And Augusta has the trademark on it. And that's all well and good for me.
Does that mean you have to pay a royalty when you say it?
I don't think so. You know what I did, Scott? I did go out and trademark Hello Friends.
I didn't know that either.
I did that because there were a lot of people that were, as times marched on, they're producing Hello Friends material. Yeah. Not because I want the money for that or monetize it. I just didn't like some of the things that I saw that were online that people were attaching to it and saying Hello Friends, and it would come back to me. People say, is this yours? And I didn't like Hello Friends showing up on toasters or things that didn't seem befitting of say a Masters broadcast. So it hasn't been applied in any way yet, but I have the rights to Hello Friends.
How about that?
So you said it earlier, so you owe me $10. Okay,
I'll pay you at the end.
We'll be back right after this.
George Clooney and Brad Pitt's new movie Wolves is on Apple TV Plus September 27th.
That's where I want you to be now.
So if you want to see George Clooney and Brad Pitt, go to Apple TV Plus.
You got to start the story there.
Or if you want to see Brad Pitt and George Clooney, go to Apple TV Plus.
I am enjoying the show.
And if you want to see their new movie Wolves,
you can't do it, I'm going to help you out. I can do it, so do it.
Definitely go to Apple TV Plus.
Admit it, it's cool. Okay, fine, it was very cool.
Wolves, streaming September 27th on Apple TV Plus. Rated R.
Welcome back.
Tell me a little bit about Billy Packer. He's another North Carolina legend.
Yes,
and
unfortunately,
before we got to him on this series, I was going to put him in it, and then of course he passed away. But you worked with him for so many years.
For 18 years. It saddens me he's not a part of this because he really, truly was the voice of college basketball longer than anyone. And I know, with all due respect to all the other voices out there, Dick Vitale, Billy Raftery, who was a partner of mine, Billy did the Final Four longer, an NCAA tournament longer than anyone. And he represented ACC basketball and North Carolina exceedingly well. Built a golf community up in the mountains. You probably know that, Old Bow. But I'm close to the Packer family. I'm still kind of in disbelief that he's gone. It doesn't feel real to me.
Excellent play by Corliss Williams, coming over to help on the weak side. Perfect timing, but smacks the ball down and out of bounds. Arkansas goes zone out of bounds.
Beck stripped it away. And that pass thrown away by Williamson.
Both Billy and his wife Barbara passed away within a year of one another. The family, the three kids, Mark and Lizzie and Brant are dear friends, but I love Billy Packer. As my dad, again, was slipping into the dark abyss of Alzheimer's, I had great mentors, a handful of friends that were a generation older who looked after me and gave me great wisdom and advice. Billy was one of them. And growing up, because of my dad's influence, loving the ACC and watching Billy do these ACC network games with Jim Thacker and on the C.D. Chesley productions.
I used to watch that too.
Yeah. I've watched all of those
How'd
games.
you get that in New Jersey?
There was an affiliate in Philadelphia that ran the package. New York did not take the Chesley ACC package, but a station in Philly did. And this was pre-cable, as you know. What you had to do, you had those unsightly antennas that were either inside of your attic or on top of your roof. Ours was inside an attic, and when I somehow discovered there was going to be a Billy Packer game on, I would go up in the attic and I would turn it around. Instead of it pointing toward New York, it'd point toward Philadelphia, and I'd see the games. You know, it was an interesting thing about Billy. The folks inside the ACC thought he had something against him. That he wasn't pro-ACC enough. The entire rest of the nation thought he was Mr. ACC. And on top of it, here he was, a star player who helped take Wake to the Final Four in the 60s. Wake thought he was a sellout to North Carolina and Duke and State. NC State thought he was favored everybody else. Duke thought he was pro-Carolina. Carolina thought he was pro-Duke. In the end, everywhere you would go, someone thought he had it in for them. And the truth is, he didn't have it in for anybody. He was just calling the games objectively, and he loved a good debate. Now, he was a character. He was one of the great characters I've ever been around in my life.
What a contrarian.
And he loved the role of contrarian. Yeah. He loved to debate. There could be any subject matter. And he would say, you pick a side, I'll take the other side. Let's debate. Really? It didn't matter. He could argue both sides of it. He was skilled.
You told a great story in your book. I wonder if you could sort of thumbnail for us here about the time that Bryant Reeves from Oklahoma State broke the backboard and Billy ran out onto the court.
Inside a big country. That's the shot we saw him hit all last year, and he's hitting it again. And Bryant Reeves now has 7.
Billy was a shrewd businessman, the ultimate capitalist, and he had businesses that people never knew. He owned the international television rights to Notre Dame football games. He created a cycling race that was big internationally. He put together in the Olympic run-ups. He was the matchmaker who would create these games for the Olympic team to have these exhibition games in arenas all over the world. And Billy did it all on a paper napkin, taking down notes from his kitchen table. Never owned a computer, never owned a cell phone. But in 95, we're at the Final Four in Seattle. Oklahoma State's in the field. Ultimately, it's won by UCLA in the championship. But at the Friday shoot-around, Reeves went in for a dunk on the layup line, and the backboard shattered. And Billy immediately saw all this shattered glass from the backboard scattered all over the floor. And he jumped over the table. We were there taking notes, meeting with the players and coaches. They would come wandering over and tell us a few things and give us good, fresh information. Yeah. And I said, Billy, where are you going? He says, no time to waste. That's money out there on that floor. And I watched him with the 45,000 people back in the day when people filled up the practice day at the Final Four. He's stuffing his pockets with all these pieces of shard glass. He came back to the table. He laid a lot of it on the table in front of us and said, okay, what's your take here? He says, you see this? The way it broke apart, they're all basically the same size. These look like diamonds. This is like a 9-carat ring right here. We could make necklaces, earrings, rings. He says, this might be right here, all of this right here, this might be worth at least $500,000, maybe $1 million. Suddenly, an NCAA official came over and said, Billy, we saw you out there. Come on, we have to have it back. And he says, why? He says, no, it belongs to us. You can't do this. And they made him empty his pockets and everything. And there was a kid out there sweeping the floor, putting it in the trash can. And Billy wasn't done. He got up from his seat and he watched the kid that had cleaned the floor and watched him go dump it into a giant waste area in the back. And he still stuffed his pockets a little bit. Now, on Saturday when Oklahoma State lost, he had some in his briefcase. He says, you want some of this? I said, I thought you were going to monetize. He says, it's garbage now. They lost. To make money, they had to win the national championship.
It was going to be big country earrings.
Big country earrings, big country brooch, big country everything.
I mean, it is a pretty fantastic idea when you think about it.
Yeah, it's genius.
If it could have worked.
It could have worked.
Yes. We have a mutual friend named Sam Farmer, L.A. Times,
such a good man.
such a great guy and so talented journalist. He told me to ask you about some coin you carried that had something to do with Pat Summerall.
It's a sobriety coin. I was just talking about it yesterday. There's going to be a book coming out about Pat and John. But Pat Summerall was a great mentor. We worked together for 10 years, being on the golf team together. And I served as his understudy and was calling the action out at 15 or 16, one of the outer holes.
The bear has come out of hibernation.
But I love Pat Summerall. And, he battled alcoholism until 1992. The day after the 92 Masters, there was an intervention awaiting Pat. And he went to the Betty Ford Center and it changed his life. And he spent the last 21 years of his life not only sober, but helping thousands of other people to change their lives. And he served on the board at the Betty Ford Center. And I got one of his sobriety coins. When I call a Super Bowl in Pat's honor, I take that coin and I put it right here in my inside left breast pocket. So it's right next to my heart. And he's right there. And I try to always pay homage to the ones before me because they really inspired me to pursue this. And all I ever wanted was them to be proud of me. It's a long list of giants of the past. And with each passing year, fewer and fewer people know who I'm talking about. But Pat Summerall, Jack Whitaker, Jim McKay, Dick Enberg, Chris Schenkel, Keith Jackson. It goes on Kurt Gowdy, and there's so many names. I hate to start rattling them off. I got to know them all somehow, getting hired at 26 by CBS. They were all around. They were all alive. They all became friends and mentors, and now they're all gone.
Summerall was who I grew up with.
Hi, I'm Pat Summerall with John Madden. We've heard about the condition of the field. We heard about these being the two best teams in pro football. They both deserve to be here, but they've still got to play.
Yeah, and I think I was a Cowboys fan, like I think you were. My favorite player was Roger Staubach.
Here.
Yeah. Couldn't ask for a better early role model, right? I grew up in Austin, Texas till I was 9, so Cowboys got wired in there. But I loved Summerall's style, which worked so well with Madden. You sometimes remind me of Summerall in that you'll let silence take over sometimes. Is that a purposeful?
Absolutely. Yeah. I studied all of those broadcasters I mentioned before, and watched their techniques. I watched their storytelling ability. And Pat really learned from a broadcaster he looked up to that came before him, Ray Scott. Ray Scott called Super Bowls 1 and 2. For CBS, and he's more remembered for being attached to the Green Bay Packers because that's when they were winning. But Ray Scott was a minimalist and made a career out of an economy of words. Breakfast, he would order scrambled eggs, bacon, toast, dry, coffee, black, no cream. That's it. He was star. Dower, touchdown Green Bay, and that was Pat. That
Staubach,
easy delivery,
Pearson, touchdown.
Yes, and I love that era that you did too, Scott. The Roger Staubach was such a boyhood hero to me, and I just looked up to that team. And fate would have it, I've gotten to know Roger Staubach and have a friendship there. I don't talk to him on a regular basis, but I've had dinners and lunches with him, and it's been a thrill. And he was, to me, he did everything the right way. And, we honored our country, served our country, and he's still a giant in my life.
We'll be back right after this.
Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No, don't. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/save. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
Welcome back.
Here's a North Carolina question for you. What, in North Carolina, the actual state of North Carolina, what's the best event you've ever covered? Whether it's golf, college basketball. I know you did Davidson, some of their run. I know you've done a lot of golf here.
Yeah.
And you've done some Panthers games, of course.
I have. I had the Final Four in Charlotte in '94, 30 years ago, and that was Arkansas. Nolan Richardson's team.
That's right. Yeah.
Vivid memories of that.
McDaniel will end it in style. Arkansas is in hog heaven. They've won the first ever national championship.
But, all these events we've had at Quail Hollow have been meaningful to me to be back in Charlotte on a steady basis every year, including the PGA Championship in 2017.
Jim Nantz and Nick Faldo exclusively for CBSSports.com at the Quail Hollow Championship here in Charlotte.
But you go statewide. I have so many NCAA tournament games because usually the state gets a site, whether it's Greensboro or Raleigh or Winston-Salem or Charlotte, every year, a steady diet of that. And yes, I've had Panther games. I called the Panthers in Super Bowl 50. It wasn't here. It was out in California.
Tell me a little bit about that experience. That was one where I was really shocked at the outcome. I really thought they were the better team, honestly, that day. And that may be hometown bias talking, but I thought Peyton was well past his prime, and the Panthers just got overwhelmed by Denver's defense.
Yeah, the defense made a statement early on. They had the strip sack and the fumble recovery for the touchdown, and I think it was it put them in a bit of shock. Cam had that MVP year, and I think all the buildup and all the things that are required of you the week of the Super Bowl were draining to him. He didn't have his best game. And Peyton didn't play great either, but he led. Peyton threw for 140 yards that day. Yeah. But his leadership is, you can't quantify it. I think that play early on, it was Malik Jackson who recovered the fumble for the touchdown.
And the Panthers have a 3rd and 10. Here comes pressure, and they've gotten to him. The ball is out in the end zone, and it's recovered by Malik Jackson for the touchdown. It was Vaughn Miller with the strip sack and Jackson with the recovery.
The thing I remember about the game was that my son was born 6 days before it. And I was on such a high. I was living in Pebble Beach, California at that time, which went on full-time for about 10 years. Now I'm there 3 months a year, 9 months in Nashville.
Okay. I knew
for
Nashville was part of it.
proximity's sake, and I love the people in Nashville.
I see.
But that game was so big. It was the golden game. It was Super Bowl 50. Right. It was 77 miles to my door. And I stayed at home. And I was just so thrilled to be a dad again, and to have my first son, that was the most calming feeling I've ever had in a big game in my life. It just, everything was in perspective in my headspace. The game was not exciting. The touchdowns in the game were a fumble recovery in the end zone, a 2-yard touchdown run by, I think, C.J. Anderson for the Broncos, a 1-yard Jonathan Stewart dive over the top. And I think that might have been it. I mean, there was not a big play to remember the game by.
Not at all, no.
And
the strip sack was probably the biggest. And, of course, at the end, controversially in our town, Cam didn't jump on a fumble.
The fumble was, the ball was just kind of sitting there. It felt like, anyway. We replayed it over again. I was working with Phil Simms, and he did a fantastic job talking about how he thought that Cam should have reacted quicker and jumped in there a little sooner.
Cam Newton decides not to dive in there. And
he backed away from it. He jumped away instead of jumping into the pile.
Yep, I guess he made a decision it wasn't worth to go in there and get it. Should have dove in, had a chance to recover it.
That was a pivotal play.
It was. You've done how many Masters now?
39.
There it is, a win for the ages.
Do you have a number you want to get to?
I'd like to get to 51.
51.
51. It used to be 50.
Okay.
I just thought that had a nice ring to it, and I was making a speech. I won an award out in Los Angeles, and Ken Venturi and Jack Whitaker I asked to be my presenters, which is asking a lot, but they both did a fabulous job, and it just meant so much to me to have them both there that night. And I mentioned the number 50, that's what the career goal is. And after the event ended, we were down at the Hotel Bel Air bar and having a nightcap, and Mr. Whitaker said, I heard what you said about the 50 Masters. He said, I think you need to adjust that. I said, what? He said, you need to go 51. Well, I said, why is that? He said, if you do the math on it, your 51st would be the 100th playing of the Masters. This is one of the nicest things anyone ever said to me, particularly coming from a boyhood hero that he was to me. He said, it'll be the 100th. I think you need to be there for that milestone Masters, and I think Augusta needs you to be there. So that was very nice.
What
so
year
I adjusted.
Would that be? That would be 2036.
And that would be Sunday, April the 14th.
You already know that?
But yeah, because it's always going to end on the second Sunday in April, and I can't help myself sometimes. I looked ahead a little bit. But, it's drawing near, Scott. It's getting here rapidly.
I know.
And, 40 is coming up next year.
Yeah.
And that will tie the record that Vern established this year. Vern going out at his 40th Masters.
So you'll have the record within 2 years.
I guess, yeah. But
God willing.
It's all getting there. Yes, God willing.
Yeah.
I would love to maybe go beyond 51.
So you're no retirement for Jim Nantz.
No, I love what I do. Yeah. I have young children who are enjoying it now, 8 and 10, and an older daughter, 30.
Whose name is Caroline, right? Does that anything to do with?
Of course it does.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I wondered, yeah.
She's living in Virginia Beach now.
Okay.
Got married last Labor Day, is married to a wonderful boy who's from Maryland. Went to University of Maryland and ROTC, and he's now a Top Gun pilot. He's a fighter pilot in the Navy, stationed at Virginia Beach, flying the F-18, single seat. So,
You were saying you have young children, though.
Yeah,
they're enjoying it
my
as well.
son's such a sports nut, and my daughter, is getting hold of it too. And I feel fit. My mind is thankfully snappy, and I can recall dates and history. My recall's good. The good Lord gave me.
You're always so
there.
quick. Yeah, I don't get how it comes.
Just I have it in my head. The paradox is my dad was defeated by Alzheimer's. And that's why we opened up, by the way, the Nantz National Alzheimer's Center. I
wanted to ask you about that, too.
It's
a wonderful thing.
Tribute to my dad. It's named after my father, and that is my life's mission, other than being the best father and parent I could ever be, is to try to eradicate this disease and be a part of a team, part of a group that somehow finds a way to treat and ultimately cure the opponent that defeated my dad. And it's been a great year, I might add, worldwide, globally, in new drugs and trials that have come through, many of which we have helped run and administer at the Nantz National Alzheimer's Center in Houston Methodist.
Where is that? Where is the center in Houston?
It's in Houston Methodist Hospital. And I have athletes that have concerns from the football side, athletes that are golfers, notable, famous folks that have called and know what we're doing, how aggressive we are on cutting edge research, and have asked if they can get before our crew and our researchers and scientists in Houston. And it's been one of the greatest gifts in my life. My dad's voice is being heard now. He was never in front of a microphone like his boy.
Really?
Never once. And now my dad's voice is being heard. It's coming out through the center named for him.
Well, that's a great way for us to close, Jim Nantz. Normally I say thank you for being on Sports Legends and finish us out, but I think I'm going to let the pro do it instead. Can you close us however you would like to close an episode of Sports Legends of the Carolinas?
My gosh, that's a lot of responsibility there. I have such...
compared to things you've done, this is
when you first told me about this, Scott, my respect for you, what you've done with the Observer all those years, I mean, your voice, so to speak, has been... one that I've listened to for a long time, and I'm just honored to be asked. And, we don't get to pick and choose who our parents are. We don't get to pick and choose our home state, our hometown, but I got the lottery ticket on all the above. I got the greatest parents of all time, who, by the way, I said they reside in Mount Holly, North Carolina. Truth is they reside right here. They're with me everywhere I go. And, I feel their presence. And I didn't get to pick where I was born. I didn't get to pick the city I could claim my own, but I feel very blessed to be able to say I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina, and to be included on, again, what we said at the start, this amazing list of people that have sat down with you in the past. Thank you. It means a ton. Thank you to everybody from North Carolina. When I'm in the state, for whatever reason, maybe it's just longevity, people now seem to know that this is the home state, and they welcome me back. And they seem to be proud of the fact I'm from North Carolina. I siphon off of that a lot of energy and a lot of love. It means a ton. So thank you.
Thank you, Jim Nantz, North Carolinian.
I love it. I love it.
Join us next time on Sports Legends of the Carolinas.
Thanks so much for listening to Sports Legends of the Carolinas, a production of the Charlotte Observer. This show is produced by Lume Ali Sally, Jeff Seiner, and Cotta Stevens. The sports editor of the Charlotte Observer is Lydia Craver. The executive editor is Raina Cash. If you know a sports fan, we've got a great gift idea for you. We've compiled the first 2 seasons of the Sports Legends interviews into a coffee table book, which includes more than 100 rare photos. Among the 33 legends in the book are Steph Curry, Roy Williams, Mike Krzyzewski, Dale Earnhardt Jr., Steve Spurrier, Jake Delhomme, and Dawn Staley. The first printing sold out quickly, but the book is back in stock now, and you can order a copy at sportslegendsbook.com. For lots more sports content, please visit charlotteobserver.com and consider a digital subscription. You can connect with me, Scott Fowler, by email at sfowler@charlotteobserver.com. Please subscribe, rate, and review the Sports Legends of the Carolinas podcast. Thanks for spending some time with us, and we'll see you next time.